You're 22 years old and you have 47 minutes until the counter closes, not the gate. The counter. You learned that difference this morning, the hard way, from a phone alert that made your stomach drop. Your rideshare is stuck in traffic outside the terminal. The driver isn't worried. It isn't his flight. You bought this ticket 6 weeks ago. $179. You found it at 11 at night, refreshed the page 4 times, and grabbed it before it disappeared. At that price, the number makes the decision for you. No seat selection, no insurance, no flexibility if anything goes wrong. You make it inside with time to spare. Barely. You're out of breath at the counter, and the agent looks at your bag the way someone looks at a problem they've already solved 100 times today. She puts it on the scale. 54 pounds. The limit is 50. The fee is $100 each way. You have $206 total. You're not paying it. So you open the bag right there on the terminal floor, the kind of floor you don't want to touch anything on. You pull out a sweatshirt and put it on. You pull out 2 books and shove them into your backpack. You put the bag back on the scale. 49.4. The agent prints the tag. No eye contact. You walk to security wearing 2 extra layers, carrying your boots under your arm because there's nowhere else for them to go. You make your seat. Middle row 31. You tell yourself it's fine. Here's what nobody tells you about flying at this level. The ticket price was never the actual price. It's just the deposit. Everything that goes wrong costs extra. And it's never random. It shows up exactly when you have the least time and the least leverage to fight it. You land 4 hours later than you planned, and you watch your suitcase circle the baggage carousel twice before it shows up. Last group off, last bag out, the way it always goes back here. Your mom is waiting at the gate area. The old kind of waiting where you can still meet someone past security, in a town small enough that the airport still allows it. She hugs you. You're sweating through the sweatshirt you didn't want to wear. You're exhausted in a way that has nothing to do with sleep. You stand in the spot where you can still see the runway through the window. The old kind of airport that hasn't built a proper jet bridge to every gate yet. Your mom waves before you even reach her. She always finds you first in a crowd, like she's got a separate sense for it that other people don't have. She asks about the flight. You tell her it was fine. You don't mention the bag, the sweatshirt, or the floor you had to open it on. Not because you're hiding it, because at 22, struggling on a flight doesn't feel like a story yet. It just feels like Tuesday. She's got dinner ready before you even text her that you landed. She always does. You don't know yet that this kind of timing, the thing that feels automatic now, is something you'll miss specifically, the exact shape of it, decades from now, when nobody can predict your arrival down to the minute and you have to tell people exactly when to expect you, because nothing about your life runs on instinct anymore. You get to her house, and you sit down on the couch, and you mean to tell her about the semester, about the job interview, about all of it. You wake up an hour later, still on the couch. She put a blanket over you and turned off the lamp, and didn't wake you up. She doesn't say anything about it in the morning. She just asks if you slept okay. You did. You just didn't talk to her. Not really. Not the way you meant to. You think this is a story about a cheap flight and a heavy bag. It isn't yet. It's the first time the system has decided how many of you would actually arrive. It won't be the last. You're 26. Same airport, same kind of traffic on the way in, same driver who isn't worried because it isn't his flight. But something's different now, and it's not the airport. It's you. You hold silver status on a legacy carrier. You carry a co-branded credit card with a $450 annual fee, and you did the math on it twice before you signed up because that number used to feel like a lot. Lounge access, fee waivers, a travel credit that covers most of the cost. You didn't get rich. You got deliberate. You reach the counter with 41 minutes to spare. Your bag goes on the scale. 54.2 pounds. The agent looks at her screen, sees the status, sees the card on file, and waives the fee without a word. Not kindness, math. Your card company pays this airline every time you swipe it anywhere else. Your $100 fee is worth less to them than keeping you loyal to a product that earns them money in places you never think about. Here's the part most people never put together. The airline barely makes anything moving your body from one city to another. The plane burns fuel, the crew gets paid, and the margins on the seat itself are thin enough to argue about. The real money is in the card sitting in your wallet, the interest other cardholders carry, and the interchange fee on every coffee you buy with it for the next 10 years. You think you're a passenger. To the balance sheet, you're a lending product with a frequent flyer number attached. You go through the priority line, shoes stay on, the laptop stays in the bag, you're through security in under 4 minutes. Boarding group 2. The bin above your seat still has room. Your bag fits without you needing to fight it. The flight is the same flight. The plane is the same plane. But the architecture of the day changed because you spent money paying attention to a system most people ignore. You land on time, your mom is waiting in the same spot. You hug her, and you're not sweating through anything. You're not exhausted in the way you used to be. You sit down for dinner together, actually together, and you tell her about the new job, the new apartment, the new version of your life that's starting to take shape. She listens the way she always has. You notice, for the first time in a while, that you're fully there for it. Something changed. Not the flight, the version of you that got off it. You drive past the old roadside diner on the way to her place, the one you used to stop at when you were broke and starving after a delayed connection. You don't stop. You don't need to anymore. You don't even slow down. That's the quiet thing about this level. The friction didn't disappear. It just stopped finding you. You're 30. You fly 35 times a year. You know the exact number because the airline emails it to you every January, and it's gone up every year for 4 years straight. You hold platinum status now. There's a phone line for people like you, answered by an actual human with actual authority, not a script. You know which terminals have lounges and which gates are a 10-minute walk from security. You've learned to read an airport the way you'd read a city you've lived in too long. Same situation as always. Running a little late, bag a little heavy. Except that the situation has lost its teeth. You get to the counter with 38 minutes to spare. 55 pounds. The agent sees your status before you say a word. Fee waived. Bag tagged priority, which means it comes off the carousel first instead of last. You walk through the dedicated lane, 3 minutes through security, straight to the lounge. You sit in a real chair and drink something that didn't cost you $11 at a kiosk, and you wait for boarding in a room that doesn't feel like managed chaos. Here's the thing nobody at this level says out loud. You are now, statistically, the most profitable kind of passenger there is. Not because of the fare. Because the airline has figured out that a flyer like you will pay for status itself, the feeling of being recognized, more than you'll ever pay for a faster route or a better seat. Loyalty is the product. The miles are just the receipt. You open your laptop just for a second. Just to clear one email before the flight. That one email turns into 6. You're answering a thread about a deadline that isn't even urgent, not really, but it feels urgent the way work always does when you let it sit in front of you. You don't notice the boarding announcement until your group is already called. You land, your mom is waiting, you hug her, and your phone buzzes in your pocket on the walk through the parking garage, and you glance at it. Just for a second. You get to her table. Dinner's already made. She asks about the new promotion, and you start to answer, and your phone buzzes again, and this time you actually look. Just for a second. She doesn't say anything. She just waits. The way she's always waited. The way mothers learn to wait without making it a thing. You put the phone away. You finish your sentence. But you noticed her face change for half a second before you did it, and you carry that half a second home with you, even after the visit's over. Even after you've forgotten the email that caused it. The lounge buys you comfort. It doesn't ask what you do with the extra hour. You spent it on someone who wasn't her. You've gotten so good at reading airports. Nobody taught you to read the table the same way. You're starting to wonder if the second skill matters more than the first, and you're not sure yet what you're supposed to do with that thought. You're 40. Your company pays for business class on anything over 3 hours, and on the shorter routes, your status upgrades you often enough that the middle seat is basically a memory now. The last time you sat in row 31 was 4 years ago, on a trip nobody was paying for, and you remember it the way you remember a kind of discomfort that used to be normal and is now almost foreign to you. The overweight bag problem doesn't exist anymore. Not because you pack lighter. Business class gives you 2 checked bags, and nobody at the counter is looking for a reason to charge you. The agents up front are working off different instructions than the ones in economy, and the instructions follow the money, not the person. You go through the dedicated lane. You sit in the lounge if the airport has one worth sitting in. You board first. The seat is wider. The meal was actually cooked that morning instead of being sealed in plastic 6 weeks ago. One flight attendant manages 4 rows up here. Back there one manages 30. You're not getting better treatment because anyone likes you more. You're getting the treatment that the ticket funds. The airline didn't build this cabin because it's nicer. It built this cabin because the contrast is the product. They're not just selling you a seat. They're selling you the difference between this seat and the one behind the curtain, and they need that curtain to feel like something, or none of it means anything. You land. Your mom's waiting in the same spot she's waited in for 18 years, by the window, with the view of the small parking lot, the one she's parked her old sedan in since before you could drive. You get to her house, and she asks what you actually do all day. Not the title. The actual work. You open your mouth, and you realize you don't have a simple answer. You give her the version you give clients. Strategic oversight, cross-functional alignment, words that don't mean anything to her and honestly don't mean that much to you either when you hear them out loud in her kitchen. She nods as she understands. She didn't. You know she didn't. You don't try again. You think about the lounge you sat in 11 hours ago, the one with the good coffee, and the quiet corner you picked specifically so you could finish a call before boarding. You were proud of that lounge once. Now you're sitting in your mom's kitchen trying to remember the last time you told her something true, and the lounge doesn't feel like an upgrade anymore. It just feels like a room you were good at hiding in. She gets up to refill your glass without asking. You watch her do it? The same motion she's done 1,000 times, and you notice the photo on the fridge behind her, the one of you at 22, the one taken the night you fell asleep on her couch. She never took it down. You realize you've never once asked her what she actually does all day either. Not the surface version. The real one. You've been so focused on the gap in how she understands your life that you never noticed the gap runs both directions. Neither of you says anything about it. The dishwasher hums. The conversation moves to something easier, the weather, a neighbor's new fence. You let it move there because it's simpler, and simpler feels like relief after a day spent translating yourself into a language nobody at this table speaks. This is the part nobody tells you about doing well. The vocabulary changes faster than the relationships do. You learn to talk in a language built for boardrooms, and you bring it home without meaning to, and it doesn't translate, and you don't notice it not translating until you're driving away the next morning, down the same empty highway you've driven 100 times, replaying the conversation, realizing you never actually told her anything true. You got faster. You got more comfortable. You didn't get any easier to understand. You're 45. Your net worth is somewhere around $2 million, and the question when you book a flight isn't whether to fly business anymore. It's which airline does it best. You know the difference between a seat that fully reclines flat and one that just leans back aggressively and calls itself something it isn't. You know which routes still run old equipment, no matter what the fare class promises. The airlines competing for you now aren't competing on price. They're competing on the whole experience, the car that picks you up on arrival, the specific thread count at 38,000 feet. You've also gotten fluent in something most people never bother to learn. The points game. You have a card that earns transferable miles, and you know exactly which transfer partner gives you the best value. And you booked a business class seat to Tokyo for 70,000 points that would have cost $11,000 in cash. That's not luck. That's literacy. Nobody hands you that curriculum. You found it the way you find everything at this level, by paying attention, while everyone else just pays, the overweight bag thing. You can't even remember the last time you thought about it. It dissolved somewhere around level 3, and it never came back. The lounge receptionist at your home airport knows your name before you say it. She says it back to you with a small smile, like a regular at a diner gets remembered, except the diner has a shower suite and a chef. You call your mom from a layover in a city she's never heard of. The call is short. You're mid-trip, mid-deal, mid-something. She asks when you're coming to visit, and you give her a real answer this time, a date, a flight number even, because at this level you can actually commit to things without checking 5 other things first. Then she asks the same question she's asked you for 20 years, the one that's never changed no matter what you tell her about boardrooms or deals or 70,000 points. How's school going? You haven't been in school in 2 decades. You laugh gently and you correct her, and she laughs too, says she knows, says it just slipped out, but it sits with you longer than it should. To everyone else, you're a different person now, a name on a lounge list, a seat that gets remembered. To her, some part of you is still 22, still figuring it out, still hers to worry about. There's a pause on the line after that. Then she says something quiet, almost like she's talking to herself more than to you. I don't need you to fly business. I need you to put the phone down when you're here. You don't have a response ready. You say you will. You mean it when you say it. You learn to read airports better than almost anyone you know. You can read a gate change before it's announced, a delay before it's posted. You never learn to read the silence at her table, the one that shows up right after she asks a question, and you answer it while looking at something else. That silence has been there for years. You're only now hearing it. You're 51. Your net worth is around $8 million. You don't charter every flight. You're not at the level where private aviation is the default. But you've done it 6 or 7 times in the last few years, when the schedule made no sense, or the destination had no direct service, and the math of connections cost more in time than the charter cost in money. The first time you did it, you expected it to feel like something. An event. It didn't. It felt quiet, efficient. Every friction point was removed so completely that the removal itself disappeared. No terminal, no security line, no boarding group, no overhead bin fight, no announcement telling you to switch your phone to airplane mode. You drove to a small building on the far side of the airport, the kind with no sign that most people would notice. Walked across a lobby the size of a living room, sat down. The plane left when you were ready. Not when a schedule said so. Not when a gate agent called your group. When you were ready. That sentence is the whole explanation of this level. The schedule used to be something you had to fit yourself into. Now the schedule is just the output of your own plans. But this isn't the trip you remember most from this year. The one you remember is a Saturday in March, your daughter's law school graduation, 3 states away, a date that had been on every calendar in the house for 8 months. The charter was booked. The plane was ready whenever you were. There was nothing standing between you and that auditorium. A deal closed 2 days early instead. Not because anyone forced it, because closing it 2 days early instead of 2 days late was worth more than you let yourself admit at the time, and the people on the other side of the table needed you in a room in Houston that same Saturday morning. You told yourself you'd make the afternoon ceremony. The plane could do it. The plane did everything it was supposed to do. You landed with 40 minutes to spare, and sat in traffic outside a campus you'd never seen before, and walked into an auditorium just as the names had finished being called. Your daughter found you in the crowd afterward. She didn't say anything about it. She just hugged you the way she's hugged you since she was small, the same hug, no different weight to it, that you could detect. That's almost worse than if she'd said something. You can't tell if it actually didn't matter to her, or if she's just gotten as good at not mentioning things as you have. You think about the charter on the flight home. How it removed every obstacle between you and that auditorium, the traffic, the connections, the boarding line, every excuse you might have once had for missing it. It didn't remove the one obstacle that actually mattered, which was a deal you decide was worth more than 40 extra minutes of sitting in a hard plastic chair listening to 400 names before hers. Next month, you'll book a flight to see your mom instead. No deal, competing for the date this time. You land early, earlier than you told her, and you sit in the driveway a minute before going in, the porch lights still off, the curtains still drawn. You don't go in right away. There's nothing stopping you. No traffic to blame, no flight delay, no excuse left to hide behind. You just sit there, and you think about the auditorium, and you wonder how many times you've called something unavoidable that was actually just a choice you made quickly enough not to feel like one. You go in eventually. She's surprised, happy. You don't mention the graduation. She doesn't ask why you're early. This is the part nobody warns you about. When you remove every obstacle between you and the people you love, you find out how many of those obstacles you were quietly using as cover, and you find out the schedule was never the real problem in the first place. You were. You're 58. Your net worth is around $20 million. You have a jet card through a provider that guarantees you a light or mid-size aircraft with 24 hours notice. You don't own a plane. You own hours. The difference matters more than people think, because ownership comes with costs that have nothing to do with flying. Hangar fees, maintenance reserves, crew salaries. A jet card gives you the feeling of ownership without the weight of it. You call, you book. The plane shows up where you need it. You haven't been through a commercial security line in 4 years. You don't even remember your TSA number anymore because the part of the system that needed it stopped touching your life a long time ago. The airline industry knows you exist. It also knows you're not really its customer anymore. The status tiers, the upgrade lists, the co-branded cards, none of it reaches you here. You didn't quit the system out of protest. You just outgrew the problems it was built to solve. Your travel now runs on what you need, not what a timetable allows. Your mom is weaker this year. Not dramatically, just slower getting up from chairs, a little more careful on the stairs. You notice it the way you notice anything you've stopped looking at closely. Late, after it's already been true for a while. You could fly to her in 3 hours from almost anywhere you are. That used to feel like the answer to everything. Now it quietly becomes a different kind of problem. Because you can go anytime, you stop going right away. There's no flight to miss, no fare to lose, no reason it has to be today instead of next week. The ease removes the urgency. You tell yourself you'll go next month, and next month becomes the month after, and nothing forces your hand because nothing ever has to anymore. You catch yourself doing this on a Tuesday, looking at your calendar, thinking about flying out, and pushing it 2 weeks without even a real reason. Just because you can. You remember the graduation, the auditorium, the 40 minutes. You tell yourself this is different. It doesn't feel that different. Money removes every excuse for not showing up. It also removes the urgency that used to make you show up anyway. You think about the 22-year-old who once ran through an airport with 47 minutes on the clock, sweating through a sweatshirt he didn't want to wear, just to make it to her on time. That version of you never once delayed a visit. He couldn't afford to wait. You can afford almost anything now, except it turns out, the thing that used to make waiting impossible. You're 63. Your net worth is around $85 million. The aircraft is a Gulfstream, registered under a holding company for reasons your lawyers explained once and you never needed to think about again. A flight management company handles the crew, the maintenance, the regulatory filings, all of it. You tell your assistant where you need to be. The logistics produce a flight. The airline industry isn't something you participate in anymore. It's infrastructure underneath the altitude at which your life runs now. It works, it serves other people. It just isn't your system. What private ownership actually changes isn't comfort. What it changes is geography. You sit in a board meeting in Chicago in the morning, and you're at a dinner in Los Angeles that night. The plane doesn't create time. It collapses the distance that used to be traveled. You decide, on a Thursday, with no real warning, that you're going to see your mom. Not because something's wrong, just because the morning is clear and you have 90 minutes free and there is nothing standing between the want and the action. 90 minutes later, you're landing near Willow Creek. You drive to the house. You knock. Nobody answers. You call your sister from the driveway. She answers on the second ring, and there's a pause before she talks that tells you something before the words do. Mom moved in with her 2 years ago. The stairs, the yard, all of it. Your sister tells you the date. You don't recognize it. You search for where you were that week, what deal you were closing. You can't find it. It's just gone, folded into a stretch of months that all look the same from here. You stand there a second longer than the moment requires. The basketball hoop is still bolted above the garage, rusted now, the net long gone. Nobody's bothered with this house in years. You flew faster than anyone in your family ever has. You arrived in 90 minutes on a Thursday because you finally could. You arrived 2 years late. This is the wall nobody warns you about, because none of the conversations about wealth ever get this far. Money buys you speed. It cannot buy back the version of the visit you would have made if you'd known to make it sooner. The jet collapses geography. It does nothing for time that's already passed. You're 67. You're on the Gulfstream, alone, somewhere over Nebraska, on your way to see her at your sister's place, the way you do most months now. There's no meeting on either end this time. No deal, just the visit. Your assistant packed a small box of your things from the old storage unit last week, stuff that had been sitting since you sold the house you grew up visiting. You open it on the plane because there's nothing else to do for the next 40 minutes. Inside, near the bottom, there's a boarding pass. Paper, the old kind, the kind you don't get anymore. A flight from 22 years old. Economy. Middle seat, row 31. Your mom kept it. You don't know why. You don't remember telling her the seat number, but somehow she knew it, or she asked, or she just wrote it down because it mattered to her in a way it never occurred to you it would. You sit with it for a long time. Longer than it takes to read. You think about every version of yourself that's flown to her over 4 decades. The one sweating in a sweatshirt with 47 minutes on the clock. The one answering emails in a lounge while she waited at a table. The one who learned to read an airport better than he ever learned to read her face. The one who could finally afford to go anytime, and somehow, because of that, almost stopped going at all. You learned every system there is to learn. Status tiers, point transfers, charter math, ownership structures. Nobody ever taught you the one thing that actually mattered, which is that showing up late costs you a bad night's sleep. But showing up rich and absent costs you something you don't get receipts for and never see the bill on until it's already due. You land. Your sister opens the door. Your mom is in the chair by the window, the good one, the one that gets the afternoon light. She looks up. You sit down next to her. You don't check your phone. You don't have anywhere else you're trying to be. It's the first flight in years where you didn't notice the seat. Somewhere right now, a 22-year-old is standing in a security line, sweating through a sweatshirt he didn't want to wear, counting the minutes until a counter closes. He's running to catch a flight to someone who loves him. He thinks the hard part is making the plane. It isn't. It never was. The hard part comes years later, after every flight gets easier, after every fee disappears, after every delay stops touching him at all. The hard part is still showing up the way he's showing up tonight. Tired. Late. But there.